Hello, I'm Neil Spooner of Spooner Bioanalytical Solutions, and I'm also the Editor-in-Chief of Bioanalysis. I'd like to welcome you to this Bioanalysis Zone panel discussion focusing on developing careers in the bioanalytical field.
Hi, I'm Tim Sangster. I'm the Executive Director of Bioanalytical Services for Solarian in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Thank you. I'm Daniel Schulz-Jander. I'm Senior Director Bioanalysis Mass Spec for QPS in the Netherlands.
And finally, Kurt,
And I'm Kurt Sales, Chief Scientific Officer for Agilex Biolabs, located in Adelaide, South Australia.
Thank you. So yes, the theme today is developing careers within the bioanalytical field. So to me, I know it's very close to my heart and something I'm very passionate about, and I know some of the people, hopefully all of us, are passionate about this as well. So the first question I'd like to just work through is, how can early career researchers get into our industry? What's the route for them to get into a bioanalytical career?
Maybe I'll take a crack at it, Neil.
Yeah.
To me, one of the key things is there's no set route. We've got the academic route where people go into academia, they do research, they understand a level of science in a particular biotechnology field, and then they get an opportunity to do research through an MSc or a PhD, and then at some point they then may get an opportunity to go into a pharma company or a CRO and be into the bioanalytical field. There's also a lot of people who have come through, actually like myself. I don't come from an academic background. I have my degree, and then I ended up getting an opportunity to work in a lab as part of my time out from university, a year off. And from there, that got me into it. And then I managed to end up getting an opportunity within Quintiles in the lab as a lab analyst and learn from there. So to me, there's no set opportunity, but again, it's more about, waiting for the opportunities to happen and taking advantage of them. Within our industry, we've got, CROs all over the world. We've got pharma companies. They're always looking for staff. They're always looking for opportunities. Many of us have all started setting up collaborations with universities. So if you have got a genuine interest in the area, there's going to be those opportunities there. It's just a case of looking for them and finding them. So I've set up collaborations with universities. I know you have, and I know other people have, and just trying to get that network of people.
Yeah, I think it's great. So, Daniel, Kurt, do you have any thoughts on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd reiterate what Tim's just said. So many of the universities in Australia now have this sort of drug discovery development programs as part of life sciences, and as a company, we've fed into some of those modules just to provide a bit of information of the journey from drug discovery and development right through to regulated bioanalysis. And what that's done is it's opened up a couple of doors for collaborations with the university, offering of internships, for example. So we've just had an internship in the immunoassay team, and that's been really fruitful. It was a 12-week placement program for an honours project. And what that does is it gives the opportunity for someone to come and get a taster of what it's like to be in a bioanalytical lab, because it really is very different to academia and even pharma. So that's one avenue. But again, we're always advertising for jobs, and there's opportunity for coming in at the bottom as a technician within the general operations team, sample management. And then there's career progression within companies, to enable you to move upwards. Equally, we've brought in a lot of what you could regard as early career researchers, but academics that have decided to switch from academia and move into industry, that have come in as principal method developers or principal scientists, and that's another avenue, for someone to come in early enough in their career to really make an impact.
And what kind of paths do you have?
Yeah, I think that's very true. The collaboration with internships, like QPS has internships through the universities and other schools within the area. And so we bring in folks from various schools, and they can actually get a whole year of an internship to really They work on real programs, and they really learn kind of the ins and outs and the routine. Kind of what we snobbishly sometimes say, oh, you don't know the industry, you don't know how it is, the pace and all these things. So that's one thing where we really reach out to the community and bring folks in. Another one is like these discussion groups and interest groups that are in university towns, or where folks like us, or like we discuss certain aspects, and people can go and mingle and get to know each other. There are options for a poster presentation sometimes, so that people kind of get to share their experiences and get to know the people in the industry, and thereby kind of opening the door a little bit, and thereby having the opportunity to go. And then similarly, I think in the university, looking for degree programs or professors who have good collaboration with industry to begin with is certainly an easier way to get in, because in the end of the day, we get overwhelmed with applications, and to have somebody who can kind of help a little bit along by recommending or suggesting initial early introductions makes it a lot easier for young talents to get into this environment. And I think similarly, I think there's also that from our side, in my mind, really the broader thinking, rather than just looking for the perfect candidate, really looking for the skills. And I would encourage anyone, if you have the skills, the problem solving and the tools, it doesn't matter that you work on this particular compound. It's really, we're looking for people who can solve problems and operate and think in the same way, whether it's in soil or in human plasma. It's really very equal.
Yeah, and I agree. And that was the next question I was going to move on to. You know, what kind of characteristics are you looking for in a young person joining your company? I've always looked at it as you can teach them various analytical techniques, but there's, you know, certain personality traits or whatever, and whether they're a team player and whether they're honest and they want to learn, you can teach them a lot of other things, as long as they've got some sort of scientific background. And even if they haven't, you can potentially teach them things if they're open to that. So to me, it's always been less important to have certain scientific skills. I think it's far more important to have the right traits. You know, you've got to be a team player in doing what we do. It's
and passion. You've got to be passionate about science. You know, you've really got to you've got to want to be in a space where, I mean, we're in an industry where we're trying to accelerate getting, you know, new medicines to market to save lives, and you've got to be passionate to be in this industry, passionate about science, and adaptable, because it's very fast moving. We've got a lot of modalities coming through all the time, a lot of different drugs, and so no two projects are ever the same. And because it's so fast paced, it really requires adaptability, malleability, and enthusiasm and drive, I think.
It's a couple of things that have come up in the discussion so far, and the first one is that behaviours. And for me is, you can get somebody who has been in university, he's got their PhD, they've done research in a very small field, in a very narrow area. What I'm looking for is not what they know, it's what they can learn. Yeah. And that doesn't need an academic background. It helps sometimes, but what you're looking for is behaviour traits. Is, can people adapt? Are they flexible? Are they willing to learn, willing to develop? And as Kurt said, that passion is amazing. That passion can drive so much. You know, it doesn't matter if you work in a pharma company or work in a CRO. What we do is hard. It's hard every day, stressful. It's a tough environment. But at the end of it, the reward is amazing. You know, you can look back at your career, at the drugs that you've helped get to patients, and that gives you a warm feeling. It really can. So for me, it's about finding people with the right skills in terms of people skills rather than the right knowledge. Yeah. There's examples. When we go in at the higher levels, we're looking for people with particular skill sets, particular understanding. But when we're looking at early career scientists, we're really not. I mean, some of the best people I've worked with, one of the best persons I ever worked with came with a sports medicines degree. If you looked at his CV on paper, would you hire him? Probably not. But I'm telling you, he was brilliant. It's about finding behaviours rather than, do you know everything? Because you don't. We're going to teach you. We're going to teach you how these systems work. We're going to teach you LBA. We're going to teach you chemistry. We're going to teach you the chromatography. It's really about finding people that are teachable, coachable, and team players. And, that potential and talent to me is much higher on my list of what I'm looking for than anything else. Is at the start of a career.
I agree. Yeah, I think those skills are paramount. And obviously with other positions, you should say you might need someone with a particular skill that you need to fill a gap, but just having people that are willing to learn, willing to work hard. And I think this connection to the medicine is really important, making sure that these young enthusiastic people realise that what they're doing is actually making a difference. Mm-hmm. And it's important, and it makes decisions, and it makes medicines. And sometimes there's been parts of my career where, it's not been so much emphasised, and people forget about that. And I think, obviously, at CROs, I guess it can be harder sometimes unless you got people like yourselves who are good at making that connection.
I've sat on both sides of the fence, and in a pharma company, you're working on a program of drugs, and you might see half a dozen a year, if you're lucky as a company, make it to market. The good news is when you're a CRO, you're working on lots of programs of drug. We see more get to the market on an annual basis than most pharma companies do, because we see all the pharma companies, or lots of them. So, but it's about having the willingness and the understanding to understand what your therapy does. And that's where those behaviours come in. Not just following the process and generating the data and running the samples, understanding what the sample's being used for. And you can't teach that. No. Somebody's, like myself, when I started in the lab, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What's the next step? Well, you don't need to know that. And, the people that I'm looking for are people that have the same kind of behaviours. Mm-hmm. And then it's like from there, when we as management or as a company, we need to encourage the clients that we're working with from a CRO aspect to tell us when their drugs make it and then celebrate it, which pharma companies do very well. Yeah. But when we're working in a CRO, it's building that relationship so we can celebrate it. But I think, I think the context of what we do is actually probably slightly easier in a CRO because we see more get to the market. Yeah. And we see a lot more therapies, a lot more modalities and everything else as well.
And a lot more tricky assays.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
You guys have got the expertise.
I think we've got the expertise at running the assays, understanding the context of the data really sits in the pharma companies. And again, when we're talking about developing career scientists, I actually had this discussion in my old company, is like, where's the next me come from? Because I'm sitting here, I've done my time in pharma and learned about DMPK and ADME and drug development. The CROs, we have to be focused on that. When we're bringing these talented kids through and talented young new career scientists through, we have to be conscious of it's our responsibility to develop them. One of the things I've always done is try to get them to a conference like the EBF as early as I can in their career, so that they don't become just a parrot of the people they're being coached by. They become their own scientists. They can see the view of the industry and get opinions and form their own. And so for me, it's a big burden on my shoulders, and I always feel it, is that it's one I like, but I've got to take the responsibility to develop my staff. I've got to take the time to work with them. And finding an environment for one of these new career scientists is really important. Finding a coach, finding a mentor, finding somebody who's willing to invest in them. And then somebody who does say, this drug made it to market, this is what it treats, this is what we're doing. And so there's a lot of companies out there, because I've worked for a few of them over my career. They are out there and they do it. And it's finding those right niches. So for me, it's really important.
I agree. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think the patient aspect is, or what we actually do and why we're doing it, is very important. It's no longer like whatever client code and the project code and do 2 today and 3 tomorrow, and just like it's all another number, but really you don't really have that connection. But it's not only for young scientists. I think it's an overall engagement aspect to share really what these programs are, why we're doing it, why we're investing this time, why it is important that we get these numbers out and that we do these analyses, and really to bring something back on, okay, what is the purpose of our role in this drug development, workflow, and that we are really a part of the larger team, really engaging our sponsors, really to share where the programs are, what they want to do. And a lot of times we function as consultants to the companies and say, okay, we need to do these and these to really assess the safety and efficacy of these programs, and we would help you along the way with various assays and exposure tests. And really so, and then the young scientists learning really that whole sets of tests that need to be done, studies that need to be run, and then they really have a toolbox really to be multifunctional and adaptable. And I think the adaptability, going back to what you're looking for, really you look for, I look for people who have mastered various situations and come up on top. Someone who goes to the same school and over and really you can predict exactly the linear pathway, that's not the person I'm looking for. I really like the person who like goes this and that and really masters each individual challenge by themselves and comes up on top. And then I know that person will figure out when there are challenges in the lab, and there will be challenges, to figure out what solutions there are, and really is able to think on their feet and ask the right questions, find the right people to help them to find a solution.
Yes, that's an important skill to when you don't know something, to ask.
Yes.
And people need to not be afraid to do that. And I think some cultures don't have that. It's such a good thing. People don't feel comfortable to show vulnerability, to show that they don't know something. So I think it's a key skill.
Yeah, I agree.
So are you getting the kind of people with these skills, are you getting them? Are you getting the number of people you need, or is there a problem?
Certainly analytical scientists that you can train as bench scientists. We've got many fantastic universities, even within South Australia. So we never really have a shortage of really good graduates to fill up the analytical scientists, and we've got a really good training program. So they get brought in, get trained up in LCMS, they get trained up in ligand binding assays, flow cytometry, and we've got a really good career path where they can move into R&D, they can move into being a study director, they can move into QA, for example. So so that's really well mapped out. The more tricky career paths are those in middle management or study directors, because generally these are not taught modules in the university. These are modules, these are careers that you're taught in a CRO such as ours or such as yours. And so to find that talent is difficult, and it generally requires advertising globally to try and find someone that ticks that box, to be able to come in and have a knowledge of science but have a knowledge of GLP or regulatory compliance. And these, whilst we can teach and bring young analysts through the ranks, and they get taught GLP and they get taught compliance and they can move up to be a study director, it takes time. And sometimes as a growing company, you don't have the luxury of time. You need to fill a head count in order to manage a growing department or a new department. And that is the challenge, really, is getting those people in.
Yeah. Any comments at your company about being able to get the people with the skills, enough of them?
I think from what I've experienced, we have through the ranks challenges finding the right talent and motivated talent. There's a lot of competition, and then there is a little bit of the challenge. Young talent, they don't really associate their career initially with a CRO. It's more like, I would rather work for one of the big pharma or the latest, greatest biotech that pops up because it sounds good and everybody talks about it, whereas we may not have that same association. So there are some challenges that we have experiences, and so we need to go out and advertise and really share the vision and the advantages that come with working in this environment, as you mentioned, the modalities, the number of different challenges that we are dealing with on a daily basis. You may be working for a large pharma and you get this one compound and that's your compound for the next 10 years. And I've been in that environment where my analysts were saying, I will retire with this compound. And they analyze that compound over and over. But we have that opportunity really to work on all kinds of really cool different modalities from various sponsors. And I think the advantages from that are certainly very broad, but they may not be initially seen from young graduates because they hear other companies much more in their environment, in the schools, whereas a CRO has always a little bit of a negative connotation to it.
Yeah. But I think, to me, now is one of the more exciting times to be in the bioanalysis field. You know, compared to when I started off and everything was small molecule LCMS, there wasn't very much ligand binding around. There was some, but you know, a lot of bosses seemed to shut down those departments and move it on, and then suddenly it was needed again, and we had to find that skill and reinvent it. And now, as we say, the modalities are so different, and the number of different techniques and approaches and skills that are needed. I think there's great opportunities for bioanalysts now. It's far more interesting than just another small molecule LCMS 2.5 minute gradient.
Yeah, I started my career out in drug discovery and development in an academic setting, and I wish that I had known the entire life cycle of what it takes to get a drug to market. And I think we kind of have a responsibility to ourselves and to the future to educate, to go out and you know, partner with universities or do open days to really get the word out of, you know, this is what a bioanalytical lab does, and drug discovery and, you know, working on a drug is only that front end bit that's required to ultimately get that medicine licensed, and that there's so much and so much opportunity available in terms of a career that is, I think, a little bit opaque sometimes. It certainly was for me as a PhD student or even postdoc, trying to understand what those next steps would be, and I think, you know, and we're doing a lot of that at the moment in Australia, in particular, in open days at universities and sponsoring various road shows and symposia, and just getting the word out of, you know, what our industry actually does and the opportunities that are there. And it's not for everybody, but at least it enables graduates to make an informed decision about, you know, what opportunities are there for their careers.
And I think you make a really good point. I think getting the word out, is there more as a community we can do? Obviously, each of you as your individual companies have your own approach to recruitment, retention, training, etc. But is there anything we can do as a community? You know, we've talked about this in context with the Reed Bioanalytical Forum. Is there things we can do there that would be available to people? And we run certain courses each year that are available to people from whatever company.
Well, it paints a really unique picture. We're talking about this in context, and I've had the pleasure of working in quite a lot of different geographical locations. These challenges change with geographical location. If the area you live in is the middle of pharma world, which is, I spent time in New Jersey, I hit a golf ball in any direction, I hit a pharmaceutical company. Everybody goes to university want to be a pharmaceutical research chemist of some description, some design. If you live in an area where that's not there, and that's not an industry, nobody knows anybody who does drug development, never mind bioanalysis, it's unheard of. You know, when I worked in Scotland, we have a small biotech and a small drug development in Scotland, but it's not a big thing. We spent a lot of time working with universities, presenting and educating. I'm now starting a similar journey in my new career in Lincoln, Nebraska. You know, there's no real drug development there. You know, graduates don't go to university and understand what drug development is, never mind what bioanalysis is. And we talked about that at Reed a few years ago, about that people don't understand what bioanalysis is, and there's so much connotation, so much misunderstanding to it. I think there is a part that we can do as an industry to help educate, and getting involved in the universities, as all of us are doing, is important. But it's just making sure that people understand that it's not as complex as people think it is, but it can be if you want it to be. You know, we have a great career, whereas bioanalysis can be relatively routine, straightforward, or it can be incredibly complex. I mean, a bench analyst doing samples and doing data is for some people with some behaviors. Being a method development scientist, it can be like banging your head off a brick wall. You know, we all know that. The people that can do compliance usually don't make great method developers because it takes a different mindset. So I think educating people that there is a wide variety of careers and opportunity within bioanalysis. And the other thing is also educating that a CRO and a pharma company are very different as well. And the type of bioanalytical scientist is different depending on whether you're in a CRO or you're in a pharma. But for me, I agree with Neil, it's an exciting time. You know, the therapies that we're dealing with, the new modalities that we talk about all the time, they're not just exciting scientifically, they're incredible therapeutically. I mean, we're looking at changes and diseases we thought we'd just never cure, which we can now deal with. And we will be able to deal with more and more of them as we go forward. So for me, anybody that we can get that word out to, and as a community, I'm not sure. I mean, we joked several years ago about having, you know, why did everybody want to be a forensic scientist? Because we had CSI and everybody wanted to be a forensic scientist. So maybe we need bioanalysis, the soap.
That'd be a riveting watch.
That depends which lab it is.
No, it's interesting. Just one aspect that I'm kind of a little bit interested in, and as well, is how has the pandemic affected what's gone on in your place? You know, did that make recruitment and retention different the last few years in your organisations, or did you just not notice? Because I know a lot of CROs kept on going, whereas a lot of pharma companies sent everyone home, and it was a bit weird. They were pharma companies sent everyone home, but they were expecting their CROs to still be in the lab, and it's like, oh, this is an interesting dynamic here.
Yeah, I mean, COVID certainly shone a spotlight on Australia. So whilst a lot of the world had shut down during the pandemic, you know, our phase 1 units and some of the clinics were open for all of that. And as a company, we actually grew 20-30% during that. So we were constantly recruiting and adapting. So I think we learned how to work a little bit differently. Obviously, a bench scientist still needs to come into the lab to do their analytical runs. But there were a whole lot of activities that we realized we could do remotely, and that caused a different mindset and a different way of working. So that's certainly something that COVID escalated within our industry, but I think it also prevented people from moving around because everyone was housebound or everyone was in lockdown, or there wasn't that much free movement.
Because in a lot of professions, I guess, people, COVID, because they were sat at home, decided they wanted to do a different career. But I guess a lot of bioanalytical scientists were too busy working, either on drug development or in swab centres, analysing COVID swabs. Yeah. And a lot of labs turned over to that. They didn't get the time to stop and contemplate their navel and decide they want to do something else.
Yeah, but I think the one thing that did impact, the hiring was still a challenge because, as I said, people were tied down. But it's also, as a community, all these meetings, local discussion groups, all the personal interaction was gone. So for young scientists to meet people and to engage in discussion and learn about it, all that fell flat. And it all was in this virtual space, which we were just kind of exploring in that way with Zoom calls and Teams meetings and all these, but it's not the same. You're not calling up somebody and say hey, you want to have a chat? But in a local discussion group, you can walk up to somebody and talk to them and get kind of to know people and open the crack door so you can actually enter that and be known that there are opportunities. So I think that was certainly something that we observed. And in general, hiring was a challenge because there were, I was living at that time in the Bay Area, and it was very hard to find talent because people were focusing on other careers perhaps, or they were happy where they were because they didn't know what would come. And so the opportunity to hire new talent that was somewhere else was not necessarily given because people were afraid of change.
Yeah. I think it's a very interesting time. So I'm very interested on your thoughts of where the trajectory bioanalysis is going in. It's, as we were talking about it before, it's been a very exciting time with these new modalities, new cures, people being involved in that and really seeing the success. So where do you see the whole field going, and what kind of, do we have the right skills? Is there extra skills we need to go and find or train for where we're going?
I think at the moment we're growing. As an industry, we're growing. And if you think about these new modalities that we're talking about, they are creating so much opportunity in bioanalysis, but they're creating so much work. Gone are the days of getting a drug to the market with 1 or 2 assays. Now you normally have an assays list as long as your arm. Yeah. But that makes so much more opportunity for development and complexity in the drug pathway that we've got to fill. So there is a huge opportunity for additional headcount, for growth in both pharma and CROs. The one thing the pandemic has done is, the pharma companies came to the fore, the rapid development of vaccines and then treatments. It was an incredibly positive story to the world. So right now, drug development is at a high. We've got all these new modalities coming through, oligonucleotides, cell-based therapies, gene therapies, and back to nanoparticles again over the last 20 years, but now being really successful with them. There's opportunities for every company to grow and develop. But you're right, I think there is a massive hole in that skills market. We don't have the skills to fill it. For me, I'm looking to fill it by developing it within-house. I've made a connection with a local community college and we're working with them. We've got a scholarship program where, we sponsor people to go to college and then work with us. Doing things like that, is to me is the long-term answer. But as Kurt said earlier, sometimes we need a quick fix. I'm not sure what that is. The quick fixes are very hard to find. And, with everybody out there scrambling for the same small resource pool, I think we have to, as a community, just start thinking we need to educate. We need to go into an education mode and start training and developing. And again, it's not fast. But if you don't do nothing, you don't move. And we need more skilled, more talented, and more resources than we've ever had.
Yeah. Certainly what we're finding is that it's driving a greater need for cross-functional teams. So gone are the days we had small molecule, large molecule, molecular cellular biology, immunoassay. There's so much complexity now with hybrid type molecules that it requires a lot more cross-training and a lot more cross-functional teams to work together to deliver the program. So that element of complexity, is something that is very new still, and something that we're still trying to work as a company towards delivering efficiently. Because training, the burden of training is real, and it takes time. So that's that certainly is something that has changed, and I think will continue to change as we see new modalities coming through. Even listening to some of the hybrid MS talks at the EBF, it's evident that a single department can't handle that type of a modality. It's a cross-functional team. So that's definitely where things are heading in terms of being able to deliver these new drugs.
Yeah, I think that's as we come out on these mass spec or ligand binding and departments go in these silos, but in the end of the day, we need to go back to why are we here, right? We're delivering, we need to have exposure information. How much is in whatever compartment? And in the end of the day, we need to find the right tool to figure it out. It's not all like the nail and the hammer situation. It is, well, maybe sometimes a mass spec works, maybe sometimes the ligand binding works better. And we need to think cross-functionally, as you said. What is the best tool? And someone needs to know to make that decision, right? And to have these universal knowledge pool folks in the organization who drive that, rather than silo-wise, this is mine because I want that project and I will make it work no matter what. Maybe the other problem is way easier on the other side. So we need to really think in the broader scheme of what are we actually doing here.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Exactly. And so we can't do that, right? We need to find a solution that is right for the problem, not the other way around.
Maybe I can ask a question. Where does compliance fit in? We've talked a lot about the science here, but in the same thing for me, with these new modalities and these new opportunities, the compliance landscape is changing incredibly quickly, and we now have to deal with that as well. We've got ICH-M10 has just arrived. You know, when we're developing these new career scientists, we're talking a lot about the scientific aspects, but for me, there's also the compliance side of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that takes another mindset.
Different skill set.
Yep, and it's something that has to be taught right from the ground up, because again, it's, you know, and speaking from experience, you know, this is not something that you get taught anywhere at a university, for example. You know, at most universities, you'd be lucky if you kept a lab book, you know, of your experiments. Coming into a CRO where everything has to be reconstructable, independently evaluated by, you know, external parties, and you know, you have GLP that's only taught within this type of landscape, and so that, and it's an incredibly important part of it.
Yeah, and I think, but that's where we as a community can really help out, because that's kind of for early scientists. They apply for jobs and it's like, oh, you don't have any GLP experience, you don't have any that. Well, how do I get that?
How do I do
right?
that? Yeah.
And so it is very hard and to bring these workshops to the community and really work through them so they have a knowledge that is maybe a little bit more than just reading the guidance and thinking, oh my God, what's all this stuff? Because we need to be open-minded to that as well, right? We can't say like we want to have this GLP expert or this documentation expert. We need to say, okay, well, what do we need? Attention to detail on these kind of aspects, and if they've shown that in their path to the job application, I think that is, as you said, teachable, right? That's the key element in the end of the day. Regulations will continue to change. The requirements will continue to change. The tools that we need to use will continue to change. So we need to have people who are open-minded and willing to learn, but have still that attention to detail.
And I think that we when it comes to compliance and it comes to QA, I think, you know, there's always a tendency to look at someone's resume and say, oh, well, you know, you don't tick this box because you never worked in a CRO in a bioanalytical lab. But they might have worked for the EMA, they might have been an environmental scientist, they might have worked for a different organization where they are still in a compliant role. And in terms of compliance, you're auditing against the, you know, the plan, the SOPs, and as a universal standard, it's all very, very similar. And so, you know, often we might pass over someone from a different industry, you know, whereas they could easily be adaptable and work within our confines of GLP.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can speak from my own experience. I come from pesticide metabolism. And trying to convince, as a young postdoc, pharma companies to say that whether I look for a pesticide or your small molecule really is not that much different. But at the HR level, they're like, oh yeah, no bioanalysis, okay, this is not pharmaceuticals, it's environmental chemistry, oh, we don't want to have that. And so we need to look beyond that. And I think we need to work then with our hiring and screening departments really to educate them on how we see the world developing and what we are looking for, so that we really find the right talent.
And I think bringing people in from some of those backgrounds is actually beneficial, because just having another cookie cutter bioanalyst, someone that's looked at the world in a bit of a different way, maybe knows some different techniques, maybe has worked to some different regulations, they might think a little bit differently and to be able to think out of the box a little bit. And I think there's a lot of benefits of bringing people in from other backgrounds, because you can train most people to pipette. Not everyone. Not everyone. And so going back to a bit of what you were saying earlier around this recruitment, is it hard? Are you in kind of competition with each other to get talent, either early career talent or later career talent?
Early career talent is geographic. Even, no matter what, when they're just coming out of university, they're not as mobile. They're still, especially in the US, they're heavily in debt. They're loose to the local area. A lot of people are looking to stay close to where they were. So we're not in competition there. Those experienced people, I think they are few and far between. They're a little bit more further on in their career, even the ones that have done 3, 4, 5 years. So still relatively early career scientists, but we are definitely in competition. We're in competition with each other. We're in competition with pharma. We're in competition with other industries. There's so little talent of any ability out there after what they dubbed the Great Resignation. We had a lot of people through the pandemic either retire or change industries. And so there's been massive gaps at the upper echelons, which have created that cascade effect. So lots of people have moved up levels. I think there was a great article I read that towards the end of this year, we're going to start to see a lot of people finding themselves out of their depth. And lots of companies realizing they've overhired people into positions. So I think we'll see a balancing of that going into next year. Then obviously we've got a recession coming, so that might affect stability as well and help make it a bit more stable. But right now there is not enough talent out there in any industry, but particularly in our industry, because say we've come out of the pandemic with pharmaceutical development being right at the top of everybody's lips. Heavy funding, heavy focus. And we are at a kind of golden age with some of the modalities, and some of the drugs that are coming through now are life-changing. They're revolutionary. So there is great excitement from investors and from companies, which is driving that growth. And we don't have the talent there. There really is a gap there. And I scratch my head about it every day. The entry level, the new career scientists, as Kurt talked about earlier and Daniel talked about, there's universities. We can get graduates and we can train them. As soon as you get past those first level levels, we're then fighting with each other. It's a dogfight. You've trained them for 3 years, right? I want them, you want them. And so then it becomes a little bit more geographic, but we certainly are fighting each other at that point, And so there is really that skills gap, definitely. More so than we've talked about it over a few years, and it's more so now than it's ever been. The pandemic has accelerated that skills gap beyond everything we could imagine. Then you add that the graduates coming out of university, some of them have spent 2 years at university and never seen a lab. So we've got another set of education to do. So for me, it's an exciting time. It's a challenging time. We get it right. There's huge opportunities for each company, for each business, for the industry. But getting it right is going to be really difficult. And again, maybe we work together rather than against each other. Maybe we support each other, and maybe we have to have almost education training sessions. And helping build bioanalysis as a brand, as something that graduates want to go towards. Because I don't know how you guys feel it, but I interview a graduate. Most of the graduates I interview don't know what bioanalysis is. So maybe there's an education thing there at the entry level. The more we feed in, then the more we'll have in a couple of years when we're trying to continue to feed the system. So for me, it's a dog-eat-dog situation, unfortunately, and it is tough. It's tough. We're ending up overpaying people because the talent is so low. That's my personal view on it. And it's a global thing. It's not a local thing to any one location. It's a global thing. I don't know how you guys feel. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I would expand it not in where you mentioned like the initial entry-level talent. The locations where I've worked at, entry-level is just as hard. We're located in the north of the Netherlands, and there is heavy competition locally. when I was living in the Bay Area. Incredible competition. So I think it's really at any level. We have there's very few talent, and as you said, there's not that education, what we do, that they really look for us. They're like, oh, you do this, oh, that's interesting. So I think to educate them and really not only about bioanalysis, but also the excitement that comes with it, right? And the benefits of it, that working with all these different molecules and solutions for various diseases. I think that is something to portray and to really convey out to the community, so that they really see why we are in this field and why we are excited about it. About the working environment that we have is very different. It is not really project-based. It is really the individual sponsors. So it really is a very different environment, but it's a very exciting environment. And so I feel very motivated to go to work and see the different problems that we solve and the solutions we provide to our sponsors.
Yeah. So is there anything we should and could be doing as an industry, so that you're not just all on your own doing these things? Is there anything, EBF has had a good history of bringing people together and solving problems by asking people what they want, what they think, and what they want to do about it. Should recruitment, development and things be something that our wider communities should be interested and involved in, or is it just a thing for each individual company?
I think it's an interesting concept. I mean, the EBF particularly has the Young Scientists meeting, but those are people that are already in bioanalysis. Those people are already committed to it. We're kind of taking a step before that, and how do we deal with that? And again, it's something we've talked about through the Reed Forum a few times, is how do we engage with the academics? Bioanalysis to an academic is a tool. It's not normally what they're studying. It's not normally what they're doing. It's one of the tools as part of their job. And I think maybe there is an EBF or a community or some kind of engagement there where we can engage with the academic sponsors to say, beyond academia, then bioanalysis is a career option. Not everybody can go on to do everything they want to do, but a lot of what you're doing in that research in biotechnology in some space or form, bioanalysis gives you a lot of those benefits, and the opportunity to be part of developing drugs and getting drugs to market and to patients is quite a passionate, engaging part of it. So maybe there is something we can do. I know all of us have some kind of reach out to universities, but maybe if that reach out was coming from the community rather than individual companies, it might be more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's forums such as this. It's information, it's webinars, it's being able to provide insight, information, which could then sort of just highlight the choice that's available, and it might not be for everybody, but it would be a step in the right direction. So you can feed into university open days, and you can try and foster internships. Sometimes these are really difficult at an individual level, individual company level, but having resources, as a community, I think would really go a long way, because we're speaking a universal language here, and so whatever we say here is applicable as much as it is in Barcelona, as it would be in Nebraska, as it would be in Adelaide, as it would be in Edinburgh, for example. So I think having those tools, and everyone's on sort of social media nowadays, and I think that social media could be the voice to enable us to move those careers forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's something that I'm not going to solve it today, but I think it's something that a broader conversation might be worth having. Whether that's a session at a future EBF event to just start talking about this and thinking it through as a community, and bringing in other people from outside. You know, with the Reed, we work with some really good recruiters that know how to do this stuff better than some of us do.
Yeah.
And bringing in some of those voices as well.
I think the key is to just get the message out there. There's a career opportunity there and it's available. I'm just not sure how we do it. The problem I have, and I've pondered this so many times over the years, the academic network doesn't exist. The academics are so individual. They fight for funding against each other, so there's no academic community to reach out to. Now in the Netherlands, you did have a chemistry community that was
there
a
is
little
a
bit more
community exactly where folks can go and really be there's like that, like there's networking activity, right, where you can push these things out and really have that open forum discussion. I think that's very important, and really, as you said, like maybe it's combined with social network. Something, because I think for EBF, I mean, it's a good forum, but I would say those are already a reduced pool, right? Those are the people that jumped over the fence, right? We want to go beyond that. And how do we get more people to be able to join the fun, so to speak, right? And get engaged into this. And so I think the career day, or like, as you said, those are things, but we need to kind of like the universal interface between software we were talking this week, right? It's like it needs to be, we don't want to have it, okay, this is QPS or this is a different company. It's really, it's important that we want to portray the career in bioanalysis and what all the different facets are there. And maybe we need to go onto YouTube and have our YouTube channels for this. I mean, I talk to my kids, and any question I ask, they're like, oh, look, I found it on YouTube, right? And maybe we need to think outside the box.
Who's up for bioanalysis TikTok?
That would be interesting.
You know, I think, you know, what that does is that it highlights that, you know, you might be a student that has come out of university in the Netherlands, you know, moved into a bioanalytical company, but that opens so many doors. You know, if you're curious about the world, if you want to go and live in another country, if you want to experience, you know, a different culture, the world's your oyster, because bioanalysis is a universal language, you know, and you know we have a very multicultural community within Agilex. You know, we brought over scientists from all over the world into Australia at sponsored visas, and you know it really has created opportunity, and I think that, you know, this type of career just does that. It just creates opportunity for young people that are keen, eager, hungry, and you know, don't see any boundaries.
And us four wise heads are great examples of that. You know, we've all worked in how many countries? I'm on 4.
Yeah,
so,
3.
Yeah, 3.
Just the 2.
Just
yeah,
2. 3.
But
so.
I think it's, I mean, that's very true. And I think the larger CROs have an opportunity, right? Where you can send scientists from one side to another, right? And hey, learn how we're doing it at a different site, and meet your colleague who is around the globe. And it is really almost a universal language. I mean, everybody has their own SOP and their own interpretation of the details, we know that. But in the end of the day, it's still M10, right? And so I think that is a very good opportunity. And young folks don't want to be tied to one little world. They want to explore the world. And I think, as you said, bioanalysis may open that much more easily than other job opportunities. So I think there's definitely something to be said about that. And we as an organization or as a group, we can really promote that these are opportunities, and we do that in our company. We bring people over to cross-train and to engage them across, so that we work the same way and we learn from each other and broaden the horizon, right? We don't want to all have the same knowledge, because that way we are all looking in the same way and nobody figures out the problem. So we need to have people thinking differently.
Are we thinking a little bit too narrow, guys? Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've been doing is thinking that we're thinking about universities. Do we really need to be attracting new career scientists once they're at university? Is that not too late? one of the things I've done in Lincoln is that we've been targeting school kids who are going off to college. We're targeting them with our scholarship, that they get the scholarship to go to college. You know, so we're targeting a little bit earlier in the system. Do you not think that would be more useful if we target them early and say bioanalysis is a career option at the school level rather than focusing on the college and university levels? Just an idea. Certainly something I've activated already.
We did something like that for like 8th, 9th graders on the local schools in my previous life, and we would bring them in and they would spend the whole day and looking at different career paths. And maybe they were doing some pipetting and looking, okay, well, this, and seeing where their work goes, right? I mean, if you do food analysis, look here on the label, it says this is so much vitamin D is in here. Guess somebody did that analysis. Your work ends up there. So yes, I think there is an opportunity, right? The Americans call that STEM promotion, right? And really getting folks engaged in learning what these opportunities are, rather than lawyer, doctor, and so forth, right? It's like there's some other jobs that are very exciting and very rewarding.
So I think we've had a brilliant conversation here, and the future definitely is bright. Just like to ask a bit of a question of each of you about what do you want to see in the next 5 years? What is your dream of how you want to see this all play out? Think big, no limitations, just dream.
For me, it's just really seeing some of these new therapies continue to get to patients. Really see the use of oligonucleotides beyond just vaccines, which we've done really well with. They've been in development now for so long, for so many therapies, and we haven't had that many hit the market and hit the patients. So hopefully, over the next 5 years, I'd really like to see that and see those drugs really getting to patients.
Thank you, Tim. Any thoughts? What's your dream?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you kind of steal the thunder with your dream, right? I think that's certainly something that we all hope for. I mean, ultimately finding solutions or medicines for ongoing diseases is all of our hopes. I think that's absolutely, and that the new modalities help accelerate that development, I think, and my dream is certainly that we'll be part of that. And so going back to the roots of our day-to-day work, I think my dream is that we break down the silos between our individual tools and way of thinking, and say, like, we need to find solutions and really start talking more broadly in solution finding, and really talk cross-functionally in a much broader way and collaborate in that fashion rather than in silos, so that we can ultimately, for us in the CRO business, really find the right solution faster and to the satisfaction of the sponsors and for the development of the new programs.
Absolutely, collaboration and collegialism, I think, will go a long way, breaking down those silos. And we're moving towards new modalities, or we're busy with new modalities as we speak. And for many of those, the regulatory guidances are a bit opaque. And my dream over the next 5 years is that we don't overcomplicate things, because that's going to hold us back. To have a pragmatic approach to how we go about getting these new modalities to market, and the regulatory compliance bits are, I think, where things are really going to make a difference.
Yeah, and we learned to do that in the pandemic, didn't we? By getting those medicines to market quickly and cutting through the stuff we didn't really need. But I suspect it's all creeping back in again now. So no, this has been a fascinating conversation. I've personally really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun, and I think the future is really bright for bioanalytical science. I think there's some wonderful options for bioanalytical scientists in the future. I think I'd like to just think about what we as a community can maybe do to support and help each other to move this forward. And I think there's some exciting things. So thank you, Tim. Thank you, Kurt and Daniel. It's been a pleasure to spend the last hour and a bit with you and learn from you. Thank you.